So what I want to do is create a mask that's going to eliminate the sky that is in the current scene of the alley, which then would reveal this layer that's underneath it, okay? So again, I select my action node. I'll go back to the Media tab. Now there are multiple ways of achieving the same end result inside of Smoke, as there are many different applications that are complex applications such as this. What I need to do is create a matte that is going to eliminate the sky. Pretty straightforward, right? Well, because the fact that this media source, which is for our plate with the guy walking in the alley, has a matte input, I could create a matte that's going to isolate that area prior to even going into action, which means that it can be created out in ConnectFX. Or in the case of a key or a mask, you can create it internally right here on the media list. Which is the better way to do it? That's up to you. I'm going to show you both really quick, okay? So if I want to create a mask that's going to control the transparency and matte information going into this layer, and I want to do it in ConnectFX, I'll click the Effects Node button to hide the parameters of the individual tool, and now I can access all the different tools that are available to me inside of ConnectFX. I'll take a garbage mask and I'm going to drag and drop it so that it highlights. See how the line highlights as I drag this tool? Drop it right on it. Now we've got this mask going to control the matte input going into media number 2. To get rid of my effects nodes, you can either click the button to turn it off, or if it's enabled like this, you can just double click on any tool and it'll also discard it and give you the parameters relevant to it. Now remember what I told you about the view over here, my player. I've got this set to be result. So we're looking at the garbage mask end result, which is this right here, the yellow coming out. So I want to draw my mask in here. So you'll see the add button right here. I'll choose add. And just so you know, control command lets you pan around. Option command lets you zoom in. Even with the add tool active, I can now zoom in and get into exactly where I want to be. So I'll click down to create my first control point for my mask, and then I'm just going to come along and I can draw my mask around this. You know what? I'm doing this part as demonstration purposes, so I'm going to be really quick about this. Let's just go boom, click a couple quick points like that. I'm not going to be careful about my mask. So I click my mask. You see now we create it. So we've got the white opaque in the inside for the sky, and the black is going to be transparent. Obviously not what we want. We want it to be the opposite, or we want it to be what Smoke calls outside. So down in the UI with that mask selected, I choose outside, and now you'll see it reverses it. If we now select the action tool, we see that nothing has changed. Why is that? That's because we have the matte off. Even though we have a garbage mask that is feeding into my matte input for this media source, looking down below, you see it says matte off. So I come over here, I turn matte on, and boom, now the mask is taking effect in the action node. This is why I brought this up. With a lot of options, it can get confusing at first. You have a lot of control whether you're using your matte or not. So this method is creating my mask or my matte outside in ConnectFX, feeding its output into the node, the matte input for that media source, and making sure the matte is on. Now let me get rid of this because that was demonstration. I'm going to throw this mask away. Hotkey so you know, Option Control, and you click on a node, it breaks it out of the connection. Now I can just leave it there and let it go if I wanted to, but I don't want that. I want to throw it away. So I'm going to drag it to the bottom of the UI, and I just throw it away. Okay, so anytime you drag anything below your UI here in this black area, you're going to be throwing or deleting it. Now, let me show you how to create the mask inside of Action. First of all, when I select Action, you're looking and going, whoa, what's that? That's not what it looked like before. That's because, let me get rid of my effects tools. So what's happening now is because I turn the matte on and I have its own self, its original footage being fed into the matte, we're basically pulling a Luma key on this. And that's definitely not what we want. Let me turn the matte off again for demonstration purposes. The matte is off. Looking in my media list, you'll see where it rates K. This is for a keyer, and it's going to be applied to this individual media source, which is the footage of the guy walking in the alley. To apply what's called the modular keyer, you just double click where it reads K, and watch what happens. we step into the modular keyer. Now, think of it this way. We start in ConnectFX, we add an action tool, and then we add the modular keyer. So we step deeper into the tool. The idea behind the modular keyer is it's going to give you start modes or presets that will allow you to pull the key that is relevant to the footage that you're working on. Let's go to a 2-view layout. Right now I'm in a 1-view, and it's not how I want to work. I like working in a 2-view. So in my flyout here, I can choose 2-view or 2 up, or you can use option 2. Option 3 gives you 3 views. Option 4 gives you 4 views. Option 1 is 1 view. Option 2 is what I'm going to work on, and this is going to give me a 2-view layout where my modular keyer is over here. And again, we can change this to be whatever we want it to be. I want this to be the result, so I'm going to choose F4. So now whatever tool I select, the end result of that tool is displayed in this view. This startup mode, this default startup mode, is a great startup mode for pulling chroma keys. You get a master keyer, you get a 2D histogram, you get a matte edge tool, and you get a garbage mask. I should hide my tools just for a second so you just can see that all the parameters will obviously change as I select each node. What I want to do is just have a garbage mask created internally inside of Action. So you can change the startup mode from the startup list. Now I'm going to tell you something right now. Whenever you switch your startup mode, you're going to get a confirmation box clarifying you definitely want to switch, because you're going to lose whatever you've worked on. If I was pulling a key using these tools here and I switched my startup mode and I didn't save it, I would lose that. I'm just going to do it for demonstration. Ready? So I'm going to say, let's go switch this. I want this to be a Luma key. Boom, I get this dialog box. Are you sure you want to change this? I say, yeah, go ahead, do that. It's going to throw away the configuration and the tools that I had in my default setup for the modular keyer and give me a new setup, a new start mode, right? Now, the reason why I tell you that is I find it a little annoying when that pops up, the confirmation thing, because I seldom go and toggle between these start modes unless I'm really sure what I'm doing. So what you can do is before you even click start mode, hold down the option key. Now I expand this out and choose garbage mask, and boom, it automatically just gives me the new setup, the new start mode without confirming. So that's holding the option key allows you to just jump into different start modes very quickly. And that's true for all your presets. If you go into the damage tool or you go into stylize or any of the tools that have presets, holding the option key will not give you the confirmation dialog box if you're changing a preset or a start mode. So let's do the same thing. I'm going to go to the first frame, make sure I'm at the first frame by clicking this button over here. And we want to do the same thing. I'm going to be a little pickier this time with drawing my mask because I want to use this one. I'll choose Add, and we'll click up here to create a mask. And then I'm going to come along and I'm just going to start drawing my mask around the edge of this building. And this case, we really need to be a little careful and add a lot of these control points, especially along there. I'll go here. Now I want to pan down. Control Command. I want to zoom in or out. Option Command will zoom in or out. Let's add a control point right here. Control Command to pan over. I'll go to this building, draw a mask there. Click, click, and create my mask. Now notice that my mask control points are all Bezier A, even though I'm not clicking and dragging, and that's just a preference we could have changed. This is the default setting, and we can change that if we wanted to, but I didn't. Let me just finish off drawing my mask, so I'm going to come over here. And because I want to track this mask, I don't want to just draw my last control point up here because there's nothing up here for it to track. So I'm going to add a control point right about there and then go out of frame and click. And once again, I'll come down my UI and choose Close. So that now closed my mask. Now, as I said, there's a preference we could have set so that the handles would not have been Bezier when I controlled my mask, but I didn't do that. But here's a simple way of breaking all these tangent handles at once because I want them all to be corner. I region select, hold Command, region select all of them. Then I'm going to switch my tool to be the break tool. So you'll see up here, these are tools relevant to masking. You'll notice we've got tools relevant to working in a schematic, such as delete, mimic, link, connect, pan, zoom, and so on. But in the center ones, these are relevant to your mask controls. So I choose break tangent. You could have used Shift B for a hotkey, and then I just click on one of them, and it breaks the tangents for all of them. Now I want to go back to my select tool. You could go to the flyout and choose select, or it's Shift M. So let's quickly do the same thing we did before. I'll choose outside to create an outside mask, such as this. And now I want to look at the end result of what's happening in action. Remember, I'm in my modular keyer inside of action, but I want to see what's happening above, one layer up. So in my view, with this view selected, I'll expand it out. I'll use the action result default camera as the option for the modular keyer views. It's the 3 key. So just to reiterate, some of the very common hotkeys I use to change my viewport when it's active here is F4 is the output of a tool. F1 is the input of a tool, and 3 is the end result of action. But just understand one thing, when you're looking at the end result of action, you do not have the ability to control or finesse and fine-tune your mask in this situation right here. So what I like to do is I'll hit F1, look at the incoming footage, and now I can zoom in, and if we need to finesse and toggle or fix some of these control points, we can. I've got my select tool chosen, so we can come in here and really just fine-tune this if we needed to. We obviously can spend as much time as we want on this mask, or just get it as close as we need it to be and do some softness to it, which we probably will. So let me just fine-tune that a little bit. Again, I'm using my Control and Command to pan over, and just, that's going to be good enough for right now. That's good. Okay. So what I was saying is we want to use a little offset on this now. So again, I'll hit the 3 key. I want to look at the end result. See, I definitely could fine tune that a little bit more, but with the mask selected, I'll come down to the UI and you'll see the offset option. I'll click it in to open the calculator, and I can enter a value of -3 and click enter. It's going to soften the edge just enough to hide some of the discrepancies I have in my mask. So now I'm done with this mask, and I want to go back out to ConnectFX. So you'll come over to the side here where it says return. The hotkey is also the tilde key. Now looking down in the UI for the action node, first of all, you'll see the mat that we're using, and it's not something I created outside in ConnectFX. It's internal of action, and you can tell that also because for that media source, we see where it reads MK under the K category. So it has a keyer garbage mask applied to it. Just for reference, if you wanted to color correct or blur or slip your mat, you could do so where it reads CC, X blur, Y blur, slip, and so on. Or if you wanted to color correct, blur, or slip the front image, you see how they're divided. Unlike the keyer where there's one large square for affecting both together, the color correction parameter, the blurring and slipping allows you to do them independently if you need to. Also, if you remember, I turned the mat off before I went into the modular keyer. So Smoke will automatically turn the mat on whenever you activate the keyer inside the media list. Now again, I purposely did something wrong, and that is I didn't track my mask to follow the camera movement. Now I did this because I just want to show you that once you create a keyer or a mat or a garbage mask internally, all you have to do to access its parameters again is just double click where it reads MK, and we step right back in. Again, option 2, I'll go to my 2 view layout, and I've got my garbage mask selected. I'll zoom back over here on this view, and let's hit the F1 key. See the front input, so I can clearly see my mask where it's been drawn. And now we want to track the mask. Let's get rid of our tools once again, so I'll just click on the FX button to get rid of it. Now there's multiple ways of tracking your mask here. If you wanted to track the mask as an individual object, you would come over here on the left side where you see these parameters, and you can use the stabilizer/tracking tools to track that mask as one object. Meaning it's going to have one tracker box for the X and Y, and you lock it onto one object that's moving, and it would be the center of the mask that's then animated, and you can offset it and so on. That's not what we want to do. We want to track the individual control points of a mask. So the concept here is we have another tracker right down here where it reads stabilizer. This is going to analyze and track any selected control points that you have. And what I mean by that is if I region select, hold command, drag across, and I select these 4 control points. If If I go into the tracker, I'm only going to have 4 tracker boxes. And the tracker will only affect those control points. If I region select, I hold Command once again, all of these control points for this mask, except for the top 2 that are out of frame. Now a tracker box will be created for each one of these control points of the mask. But before we go into the tracker, I want to point out something. Directly under the button that reads Stabilizer, you're going to see an option to control your tangent handles. This is what's called the Adjust box, and it's going to control whether the tangent handles of the selected control vertices or control points of your mask will be affected while your track is being performed. So you can toggle it on, you see Adjust Tangent, or off, Adjust Off. Leave Adjust Off in this case. And then I'm going to click the button that reads Stabilizer, and we step into the Stabilizer/Tracker. Let me go to my Zoom option. I'll choose Fit. And you can see what we get. We get a tracker box for every single control point we had selected of our mask. Notice over here, you'll see it reads Track 1, Track 2, Track 3, Track 4, and you'll also notice in the viewport, as I enable each one of these, it's telling me that is the selected tracker, and they're all given different colors to represent each one of the individual trackers. You also have the active option, and with Tracker 1 selected, if I turn off the active, oh wait, this is a good point. Let me turn that back on. Notice an option down here that reads Gang. If you expand this flyout, you can see we've got Selected, we've got Solo, and we've got Ganged. When Ganged is enabled, any of the parameters you change, such as active, or your reference box size, or your track box size, it will affect all the tracker boxes, no matter which one is selected. If I enable Selective, and I now go and turn active on and off, you'll notice that only Tracker 1, the currently selected one, is going to be active or non-active. If I choose Solo, then only the selected tracker is going to be affected, and all the other trackers are not going to be selected or affected. I actually want this set to Gang, because I want any parameters I change to adjust and affect all of them. Now you look at the screen and you can see that I have 22 tracker boxes, but my UI only shows me 5. Well, how do I access trackers after the number 5? You use your up and down arrow keys. So if I start going down, 2, 3, I'm just hitting the down arrow. Now you'll notice it goes to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on. And the up will let you toggle to select the other ones. Just because the UI has a limitation, we don't want to see 22 trackers buttons here lined up along my UI. You can still access all of them by using your up and down arrow key. You can also obviously just select them in the viewport if you want to. Now this is a pretty straightforward track. We've got camera movement. It's nothing horrible as far as drastic movement or anything, so I don't think we're going to have any major issues, but I will bring up this fact of the fixed option. I want to explain that just a little. When fixed is enabled, what's going to happen is the very first frame you start your track at is going to be the reference point for every single frame after or before that, because you can track forward or backwards. If fixed is off, what's going to happen is every frame that is being tracked is going to use the previous frame as its reference point. Now there's benefits and negatives to both methods, and tracking is an art form itself. This is a very powerful tracking tool, but it also gives you a lot of control so you can finesse and fine-tune the track if it's a little more difficult than what I'm going to experience with this. Think of it this way. If the first frame you start to track is going to pretty much be exactly the same throughout the duration of the track, you can leave fixed on. But if your image or your reference area is changing in some way, whether it's through lighting changes in the scene or a shape changing, you might want fixed off, because then what's going to happen is frame 2 is going to look at frame 1 as a reference, frame 3 is going to look at frame 2, frame 4 is looking at frame 3, and so on and so on and so on. So if there's a gradual change to your reference image, having fixed on might not be a good idea. But let's say at frame 22, there's some kind of weird lighting flash that happens, and at frame 23, it's going to go, hey, where did that go? I'm looking for that, and it might lose its track. So there's a lot of different controls you can use as far as your tolerance and your snap options and your step options. But in this demonstration, that's about as far as we're going to go into the depth of the tracking tool. But just understand that fixed is going to use the first frame as its reference throughout all the frames, and turning off fixed is going to update the reference with each previous frame. And that is also going to be affected with the gang option. So this fixed, by me turning fixed off with this set to gang, I just turn fixed off for every single tracker marker. If I had it set to solo or selected, that fixed option will only be for that currently selected tracker box. Because there will be times when you might want one tracker to be fixed and one not to be fixed. Okay, anyways, so now I have my parameters set. I've got all my trackers selected. I got them set to gang. I'm just going to choose Analyze Forward, and smoke goes through the 75 frames. And what we're really animating is the shift value. So now that it's done, if I scrub through, you can see our tracker boxes are bouncing all over the place. Okay? So let me choose Return, which is going to take me out of the tracker. So now I'm back at the modular keyer / mask controls tools. And I want to choose Return once again to go out to ConnectFX.